This is going to kind of work like this. This is stuff from your background that you want to review and make sure you understand. So first of all, what a function is it's a set of points that has a special relationship to it. So this is kind of the definition I decided to use. It just says a function consists of a set of inputs that are called the domain, and the set of outputs are called the range. Okay, and the rule is this. This is what's important. It means that every input will always give you one output. So one way you can think of this in terms of x and y is every x is going to give exactly one y. That's what a function is, okay? So we're going to start this kind of simply. There's different ways to look at this. So these are kind of the ways that I like to do this, is like this. Okay, so a function can just be points. Okay, first of all, these are the inputs, those are the outputs. Okay, so here's what you have to ask. If it's a function, you got to make sure every x goes to one y. Does it do that on this problem? Yes. Yeah, 9, 1, 13, 26, 17, 34. That's good. That's what a function looks like, is every x has one y. So that's kind of the question you always ask yourself, is then that would be a function. Okay, the domain is really all the inputs. That's the x. So you just write that as, just list it, 5, 9, 13, 17. That's the domain. The range is all of the y's, or the outputs. So that is 10, 18, 26, 34, like that. Okay? Now I think this next problem, I want you to add an arrow on this. I'm missing something. So on Carl, let's put an arrow towards Becky, and let's put another arrow towards Kathy. Okay, we're going to see if this is a function. Okay, so first of all, what do you have to have? Every x has to go to one y. Okay, Ken likes Jill. That's cool. Brad likes Kathy. That's cool. How about old Carl? Carl's a two-timer. So since he's a two-timer, that's not a function, right? That x cannot go to two girlfriends. Okay, we can't have that. Okay, so that would be no, that's not a function. Okay, now we still do the domain and range the same way. The domain, and you can just do like K, B, C, that's good enough. And then the range is just Jill, Kathy, and Becky, like that. Okay, but that's kind of what you look for something not to be a function, is one x is going in more than one direction, like that. Okay, now let's see, on this one, I think I intended this to look kind of like this. Just draw an arrow like that. And let's take a look at that. Does that look like a function? Yeah. Bob, 1y. Ann, 1y. Dave, 1y. That's a function. Okay, you always just look for an arrow going in two or more places. Okay, like that. So this one would not be a function, and then the domain is just going to be, you just use the first letter, B-A-D, and then the range is going to be Miss L and Mr. B. Okay, like that. So that's the idea. So that's real simple. Does everybody understand that? Okay.
It's not a function because Dave and Ann.
Oh, hold on. I said yes, but what I did is I circled no, and I didn't intend to do that. That is a function, right? Okay, sorry about that. Okay, sometimes I talk and don't write. It doesn't work. I don't match that up very good. Okay, so the next thing is a relation. A relation, just write this down. That is just a set of points. And that's good enough for this level of a class. So a relation just means you have a set of points. A function is a special set of points where every x goes to one y. So that's the idea, okay? Okay, now on this next page, we're going to look at kind of the same thing. Now this time what I'm doing is on this one, we're going to see if it's a function or not. So the domain, again, is just going to be these x values, okay? And notice that you have a 5 twice. You don't have to write that twice. When you write your domain, it doesn't really matter what order you put it in, but if you put that in numerical order, you would have 3, 5, 12. That's the domain. The range would be the y values. Okay, so that looks like, again, in numerical order, that would be -3, 4, 6, and 9, like that. Okay? Now let's see if this is a function. Okay. because that 12 occurs one time, right? And it only has one y value. That's good. That 3 only occurs once, so that only has one y value. But look at that 5. That occurs twice, and it has two y values. So is that a function? No, that's not a function, okay? So the thing is, you found an x, so you kind of like have the 5 mapping to 9 and mapping to 4, so that one is not a function, okay? All right, so that's how you can figure that out, okay? Okay, let's look a little bit at this next thing here. So we're going to look and see if this is a function. Okay, now you can do this in your head. I don't care if you do this in your head, but what I'm going to do on this is the domain is all those x's. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to write down the x's, -1, 1, 5, 7, and 10. And then I'm just going to make a mapping diagram. Like the -1, that maps to 3. The 1 maps to 6. The 5 maps to -1. The 7 maps to 4. And the 10 maps to -3. Is that a function? Yep. Okay, so you can do that in your head, or you can draw that out. If that's helpful to you, you can do that mapping diagram and easily figure it out. So that is a function. Okay. The next one, I don't know what in the world I did on this. Some things are kind of left blank here, so I don't know what the intention is here. Well, let's just put a 1 there. What's that?
We have 7 on that. Yeah, -7 and then 8.
Oh, that happened. Okay, all right. Okay, so 7 and 8. Okay, that helps. So that's a 7 there, and that's an 8 there. Okay, let's just do this in our head. Is that a function? No, how come? Yeah, because this x has 2 different y's. Okay, so that's not a function. Okay. If you need to draw that mapping diagram out, you can, but you don't have to do that. Okay, everybody with me on that? Okay. 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 Now this to me is where it's a little harder for students, is this next exercise. Now what you're doing is you're given an equation, and we're going to see if this is a function of x. So what this means is if you got an equation, you want to see if it's a function, this is going to be a function of x. What you have to do is you got to answer this question. You got to ask the question, if you plug in x, if you plug in anything for x, you're going to plug in something there, the question becomes, how many y's do you get out of that? And a lot of these times, these problems you can do in your head. So let me explain kind of what I'm doing there. Okay, so if I put a 1 in for x, what would y have to be? If x is 1, what's y? 1 plus 8 is 9, right? And you're only going to get one answer. So no matter what you plug in for x, you're always going to get one answer for y. Does that make sense? Okay? If x is 0, y is 9, and it can't be anything else. Okay? One thing that you might want to do on these problems, you don't have to do this, but if possible, solve for y. Sometimes that helps students a little bit to figure that out. But basically the idea is you have something plus y equals 9. Well, whatever you put in there, when you solve that equation, you're going to have 1 left over y. So that is a function. So that's yes. If you want to do it this way, if you just move the x to the other side, you would have y equals -x plus 9, and then it's a little bit easier sometimes to do that way. Okay. Well, if you plug in for something for x and do that arithmetic, you're going to get one answer, right? Okay, that's what's important. So that's why that's a function. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, now let's kind of do most of these by solving for y. That's what I recommend you do first on these problems. Okay, so let's do this. I'm going to solve for y, so I'm going to move the x squared to this side, so I'll have y equals -x squared plus 4. Okay, now here's the question you got to ask yourself. Okay, if I put one number in for x, how many answers am I going to get? 1, right? Okay, only 1. Because if you put a 0 there, you would have 0 plus 4, you get 4. So it doesn't matter. You're never going to plug in x and get like 2 answers out of it, right? Does that make sense? So that one is also a function, okay, for that reason. Okay, now it's going to work a little bit differently on the next one. Okay, So again, let's take this equation and let's solve this one for y. So let's move the x to this side. That will give y squared equals negative x plus 9. Okay? Now I'm going to do something real simple on this one. If something's not a function, all you got to do is find one x that causes 2 or more y's. Okay? So let's do this. What if x is 0? I'm going to keep it real simple. If x is 0, you would have y squared equals 0 plus 9. So you would have y squared equals 9. How many answers are there to this equation? There's 2. What are those 2 answers? 3 and negative 3, right? Okay. So see, if you plug a number in, and all you got to do is find this to happen one time, so y is plus or minus 3. So what this means is if x is 0, then y is 2 different things. So that would not be a function. That's what you got to do, is just try to plug an x in and see if you can find one that makes it not a function. Okay, does that make sense? What you will find on these problems most of the time is what made this not a function is that the square was on a y. This one was okay because the square was on an x. That's kind of how that basically worked out. Okay? Okay, now let's do a few more of these to kind of get the idea. Okay, this one's already solved for y. So we have y equals negative square root of x plus 1. Okay? The question is, if you pick something for x, how many answers do you get?
2.
Oh, no, one.
If you got 2, I want you to tell me what they are. Okay? So if x was 0, you would have negative square root of 1. One answer. Right? If x was 2, one answer. Right? So that is a function. Okay? That negative in front of that radical doesn't make any difference. So it's basically, does every x give one y? Yes, it does. So that's a function. Okay, does that make sense? Okay. Now let's look at the next one. You have x squared plus y squared equals 81. Okay, we'll solve it for y. That's always a good way to go. So let's go through and let's move the x squared the other side. So we'll have y squared equals 81 minus x squared. Then we'll do the square root of both sides. So we'll have y equals plus or minus, and that's the whole key on that, is if you do the square root of both sides, you have a plus or minus. Okay? Now, let's see now. Okay? Give me a real simple number for x, and keep it real simple. 0. How many answers would you get if x is 0?
1.
You'd have square root of 81, right? Which is 9, but what's the deal? Plus minus gives you 2 answers. Right, okay? All right, so you're going to have that. You have to have that. So what's going to happen is if x is 0, then what you would have is y equals plus or minus square root of 81. So you get y equals plus or minus 9. So what you get is 2 points. You get x is 0, you get 2 y's. So that's no. Okay? So one of the things, what caused this to not be a function? Y squared is what caused that to happen. Okay? It's because if you solve that for y, you have that plus or minus, and that's how that works out then. Okay? So let's look at one more of these. Then we'll finish up tonight just with, I think, some evaluating functions. So this is another real short section. If you were going to solve this equation for y, tell me what you would do. You'd factor the y out, right? Okay, so that's the only way you can do that. So you factor a y out, so you'd have y times x minus 2 is equal to 1. Then what would you do? Divide by x minus 2, exactly. So what you'd end up having is you would have y equals 1 over x minus 2. Okay? Now the question is, when you plug any number in for x, how many answers do you get? 1, right? So if you just pick a number and plug it in for x and calculate, you got 1 answer, right? Okay? So that would be a function. Okay? So the idea on that is, regardless of what x is, you're going to get 1 answer. Okay? So that is a function.
What if it's 1 over 0, though, because if you do 2 minus 1 over 0, it's undefined, it's not a function.
Yeah, okay. It's still going to be a function, though. Are you thinking about x equals 2?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, if x was equal to 2, then you would be undefined. That doesn't matter. What matters is every x either gives 1 answer or it gives nothing. Okay? If it gives nothing, that's okay. That's the idea, okay? Okay, let's do, I think these last two, let's do 11 and 12, then I will let you go. Okay, so when you're evaluating a function, okay, this is what x is. You're just saying, if it says h of 8, that just means you need to know if x is 8, what is y. So when you do h of 8, all you do is just where you see an x, you plug in an 8. So you would have 8 minus 2, that would be absolute value of 6, so that would be 6. So when you see this language, if you see h of 8 equals 6, you need to understand that what that means is if x is 8, y is 6. Okay, that's what function notation means, is that's saying what is y when x is 8. Okay, that's what that means. Okay? Now the next one's going to go like this. So what you're going to do is everywhere you see an x, what are you going to do? You're going to plug in x minus 1. You're going to plug in whatever I have there. So what you're going to have on this is f of x minus 1 is going to be equal to 3 times x minus 1 squared minus 4 times x minus 1 minus 3, like that. Okay, now let's work it out. You probably ought to work it out, okay, because that's all you do is plug that in. Now let's see if we're down with this yet, okay? You can FOIL that. Okay, so if you do what I highlighted in yellow, it goes like this. X times x is x squared. Negative 1 times negative 1 is plus 1. Be careful with your signs. Then if you have x minus 1 squared, you multiply those two together to get that, and then what do you do with it? You double it. You multiply it by 2. So that's going to be minus 2x. If you don't like doing it that way, write it out twice and FOIL it until you do like doing it that way. Okay? And then this is going to be minus 4x, and then plus 4, then minus 3, like that. So the rest of it's just distributing and collecting like terms. So from here we would have 3x squared minus 6x plus 3 minus 4x plus 4 minus 3. If you put your like terms together, you're going to have 3x squared minus 10x plus 4. Okay? If I did my arithmetic right, and I think I did. Okay? All right. So we start off in chapter 1, not too bad. Pretty easy. Okay? All right. So be sure if you didn't give me that video thing, watch it before Thursday and then bring that to me. I'm okay with that. Okay? Was there anything in that video that was very interesting? You know what I liked? Did you notice that when they dropped the needle? Yeah. And the probability was 2/pi? That's weird. That's called the buffoon's needle problem. You learn that in a probability class. So who would think pi would show up? Who would think? What was the interesting video? The question of the video is, do human beings invent it, or do they discover it, or is it kind of both? That's what I think.
Yeah, that's right.
There are some people that will say that the universe is nothing but math. There are physicists now, that's what they say. The universe is constructed out of mathematical rules. So some people would argue that that's real.
So, okay, will you bring me back on Thursday?
Yeah, that's fine.
Now, and one page.
What's that?
Yeah, one page. Oh, one page.
Yeah, it's a very open-ended one. Right. Mainly what I want to do is I want to make sure you watch the video. Just tell me what you want. Tell me what you find. I don't grade your grammar. If you have a run-on sentence, you don't get an F.
This is math.
So it's just, I want you to watch it, and I think you'll enjoy it. That's it, right, something about it, okay?
On your homework.
Okay, so do you have a minute?
Okay, I did.
Yeah,
Where are
hang out,
you?
and I'll,
Oh, nice. Oh, was it?
yeah, if you guys, if anybody has any questions,
I think I like
I'll
my
help
TA.
you.
Have to do all the quizzes before or after lab?
The first one, she
What?
before this one, but normally we have to do.
What did you have me for?
For lab.
But I think we forced to look at quizzes like
Oh, you, that's CCD.
what I usually
Oh, really? I think maybe.
I'm glad to have you. That's totally
And
what
then
I'm
number
saying. I was trying to like go through it, and I
I
was
mean, the
like,
thing about it is, it'll help you to get ready for Cowboys. You see,
You
your
might as well.
Denver's kind of,
Yeah,
I
no.
want to
That's what I work
making
for.
sure that students
Yeah,
feel like they're prepared for
I
Cowboys.
try to get them.
Okay. Now, are you familiar with how Canvas works at CU Denver? So you want to get on there and let me get my syllabus, because it's on there. I don't think okay, you already got, I do have some extra copies too. So that's the first thing. You want to make sure that you know that. You already know from my class how to use my math lab. And,
Archie has like finished.
they're on Canvas also. The way I do it on Canvas is different than D2L. You have like week 1 and the handouts.
Yeah.
Week 2.
It's been a while ago.
Do that, let me know if you have any questions, okay? That'd be great. What's your mind?
I tried to do it on like a substitute of paper, but then I just couldn't get it right. Let's go, guys.
Yeah.
You're waiting and stuff.
Oh.